Oh, day after the Super Bowl edition of BloodHorse Monday. His name is Sean. I'm Louie, hanging out with you in our studio. No wind gust today, Sean. I know you're incredibly disappointed by that. Not as disappointed as a Giants fan, though, that the Eagles went in and didn't just win the Super Bowl, Sean. I mean, this wasn't just a ho-hum 28-24, gonna go around. No, they were up 34-0 at one point there.
That was hard to watch. Yeah, that was probably the worst football game I've ever watched in my life. The only good thing about it was that Saquon didn't really run away with anything yesterday. So as a Giants fan, that kind of made me happy. At the same time, I'm also happy that he did get a Super Bowl ring. But yeah, that was not a good game.
Oh, there you go. I was smiling because on Saturday, and I was thinking about this, getting ready for this show. And of course, we'll show the replays as we get into it again. Louie Rabaut, Sean Collins hanging out with you, BloodHorse Monday. We'll talk today to trainer Ian Wilkes and the connections of Burnham Square. And of course, our guy Frank Angst from BloodHorse.com will join us as well to get you updated on what's going on around the website, but of course, going on in horse racing this weekend as well. Coming up, Risen Star Weekend already, 50-point races. And I mentioned all those 3-year-old things. We'll talk Suncoast. We'll talk Sam F. Davis. It was so nice on Saturday to just sit down and enjoy a 1.25 mile turf race at Santa Anita Park with a bunch of older horses whose resumes I understood. There goes Harvard, wins the race. You know why? Because he's an older horse that knows how to rate on the front end. These kinds of things. It was just nice to watch that kind of race.
It was nice to see him get back into form, too.
I agree.
It's been a while since he'd won a race. It was nice to see him. I know they were talking a little bit before the race when I was watching about how he has been kind of off form recently, but he still ran a pretty good race in the Breeders' Cup. Glad to see him bounce back like that.
Yeah, and frankly, with all of the awful events of the fires around Los Angeles, it's nice to just see racing with those mountains in the background, clear skies, all of the things. So great stuff out there. I've got so many. It's interesting, Sean, when you get, you're a couple of years into this, I'm a couple of years into being around horse racing, and you realize, that beautiful thing about our sport, the regionality of it, the people around the country. And then, when things like this happen, or like a Super Bowl, and, Kevin Kirstein from the Churchill Downs office, who we saw last week.
Yeah, he's pretty happy.
He's not upset today. That's right. No, he's pretty okay with all the chance breaks. But you get to know people from, frankly, all over the world. One of the best things about horse racing. So when the things happen, the fires happened in LA, I was always thinking about our friends out there. But we do go to the Sam F. Davis here. John Hancock gets the win. We get the kind of finish. Reminded me a little bit of the Remsen last year between Dornick and Sierra Leone, with, frankly, in this case, John Hancock acting just like Dornick, re-rallying when he got challenged in the stretch, and then, of course, a great run as well. In second place from
Owen Almighty.
That's right. We talked about Owen Almighty quite a bit on this show last week. Thanks for joining us live on YouTube, by the way, on the BloodHorse page, uploaded after the show for all of those. But let's kick it to Jason Beam on the call of the Sam F. Davis.
Camp Hale, fourth, still about 2.5, 3 off the lead. Right outside of that one, Dr. Ruben M. Starting to launch a bit from the back is Very Bold. Poster starting to get underway, was last, has gone by a few rivals as Treaty of Rome drops out of it. Poster's on the move, but still has 6 or 7 to find. Around to the top of the stretch, John Hancock and Owen Almighty. They've been going at it since they sprung the latch. They've now put 3 on the field. Camp Hale moves up to third, going to swing to the outside. Poster continues his move right down the center of the track. John Hancock, Owen Almighty, shoulder to shoulder at the 8th pole. John Hancock on the inside, Owen Almighty on the outside. Camp Hale still 3 lengths back. Poster continues to make up ground. Owen Almighty goes narrowly to the front. John Hancock battles right back. John Hancock, Owen Almighty, John Hancock. John Hancock signs his name to a Sam F. Davis win. Owen Almighty was valiant, but Camp Hale, fourth, still about 2.5, 3 off.
To the signs his name to the Sam F. Davis win.
Classic race call.
It's as good as it gets, right? And so good job by Jason Beam on the call there. I saw a post from Frank Miramotti the other day, just saying that's the good stuff. Good job there. So really, really do appreciate it. By the way, you are welcome to join us on YouTube if you wanted to comment on the show. We'd be happy to hear from you. Hi, Judith. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on BloodHorse Monday. Maxime Louie, a little Frenchness. Let's go. We mentioned people all around the world, catching people all over around the world here on BloodHorse Monday. Flavia Pratt with the ride there. Hey, we see this kind of rally in the stretch. You see horses that even in their own, just their second start ever, want to get there, want to get these things done. What really stood out to you here about John Hancock? We'll get to another horse that I think had up and under the radar great race here.
Well, I really liked the fact that he got headed in mid-stretch and then battled back. You mentioned the Dornock Sierra Leone earlier. It was that exact same kind of thing when you see a horse down on the inside get brave and fight back, obviously, you know, Dornoch went on to do great things when the Belmont Stakes and the Haskell the following year. So I like to see that kind of resilience from a 3-year-old, especially as we're moving towards the Triple Crown.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought Owen Almighty, frankly, did very little wrong here. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to scream like distance limitations or anything like that. I didn't see anything like that. I agree with you about John Hancock. How about Poster flying on the outside after what was not a great start? You know, out of the gate. I do wonder too with Poster, you know, what we saw in the Remsen and those things. If he's going to have to be a little closer to the pace to be more effective as, you know, we get into these longer races, they're going to play to his style. Obviously, we saw with Sierra Leone last year, these deep closers can still win this race, right? And, you know, for years we talked about, especially in the points era of the Kentucky Derby Trail, horses needed to really be in that pressing group or in the front to win. We obviously got, that was all shattered by Rich Strike. Many things shattered by Rich Strike. And his efforts there.
Everything.
Yeah, but we're seeing more and more of those horses. You know, Mystic Dan wasn't in that front group. He was on the final turn because Brian Hernandez Jr. made a Calvin Burrell move, those kinds of things. But I think for Poster, he's going to have to be in that kind of position to be effective. More like Mystic Dan was in the Derby, in that 4th, 5th kind of position in a normal 10-horse field. I don't think this far back is fair to the horse, frankly.
And I think the main thing with him is, you know, the race that really did not kind of set up for him. The track was playing pretty speed favoring throughout the day. There were a lot of horses that were laying up close. So I think he was kind of up against it. I was just happy to see him come back. I know he hadn't had a lot of training kind of leading up to it that got impacted, or there was a lot of training that got impacted leading up to it because of some of the weather. But I think that seeing that strong of a close kind of against the bias, I think was definitely a good sign moving forward. In the Derby, you know, you don't want to be all the way back unless you're a Rich Strike, unless you're a Mind That Bird, those type of horses. But, you know, crazy things happen in the Derby. The pace a lot of times gets a lot quicker than you expect it going in. So I wouldn't be too upset with him being that far back in the Derby. Right. Do want to see him probably the next starter to show a little bit more closeness to the pace.
Yeah, I think even in like a Tampa Bay Derby, you're locking up 3rd position if you run like that. You just are, because there's going to be competitors in that field that are simply going to finish faster than you. Not the fastest race ever coming home, but last time I checked, that race was run on February 8th. So we still got time to kind of figure those
3-year-olds are still developing.
No, that's exactly right. And frankly, we may not even have seen some of those. We've seen buyer figures from other 3-year-olds that are better than what we've seen in some of the stakes races, even. And so a nice reminder this time of year, don't fall in love too much with anybody. You know, we got a long way to go.
Now, one of the really cool things that I enjoyed about this race was the part coming down the stretch, John Hancock versus Owen Almighty. That was the champion jockey battle.
Yes, it was.
Flavian Prat versus Irad Ortiz Jr. How fun was that to see them kind of throw it down for that entire stretch run?
And kind of an exclamation point on the old Eclipse Award there for Mr. Pratt. How about that?
Proving it right there, right?
It was an awesome stretch duel. As soon as I got done, a guy I've done a lot of shows with, Barry Spears, does some paddock work on Tampa Bay Derby weekend. I texted him right away, something I can't say on air, and then immediately, what a race. I think we were waiting for one of those in this 3-year-old season that was just bang, bang like that, and we got that stretch run from those two.
And 2 really good horses, a promising maiden winner that was stretching out, and Owen Almighty, who's definitely well proven. You know, he got disqualified from his win the time before, but he's finished first in 2 stakes races, was second in a graded race. He's a legit horse, and we'll see what both of them have going forward.
On his way for sure, 20 points, of course, in that one goes to the winner in John Hancock. You know, when I knew John Hancock was going to win, when friend of shows as well, Matthew DeSantis, tweeted, "Oh, hey, you know, he didn't actually sign the Declaration of Independence." It's like, bro, you just guaranteed a win on Saturday. That's how this works in horse racing. You can't besmirch horses, then expect them not to be great. But as you mentioned, starter in a maiden special at Tampa, an unusual route for a Brad Cox trainee. But boy, he showed everything on Saturday, so hopefully moving forward, just continues to be on the improve.
He's having a larger presence in Florida this year than he's ever had before, and it's nice to see him kind of having the success here. This is really going to kind of help him to spread his horses out. You know, every year he's going to have quite a few good 3-year-olds. I think having this success at Tampa, having horses that have been running at Gulfstream, you're gonna see him more spread out with his division over the next few years.
We've definitely seen him on Long Island and in Arkansas fairgrounds, of course, in different places.
Kentucky at Turfway.
A little bit. Yeah, just a little bit, right? So there you go. Cara won the Suncoast a couple of races before that, punctuates a 3rd win in 4 tries over her last 4 races in the Pocahontas. Before that, of course, in a maiden win. This one in a listed stakes in the Suncoast after a 5th place finish in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. This was one of those questions, and when we talked to Frank Angst last week, he brought up the fact that, especially on the colt side for the Derby, you want to be good that first race, right? And so we saw the bounce back last weekend as well. But this weekend, we got to see Cara in the Suncoast. We go to Jason Beam for the call.
Back out to a length. Junta continues in second. Italian Soiree toward the inside. Starting a move from the back. Dancing Magic trying to run on. Delarane's looking between horses and Queen in the deck. Her Laugh is starting to commence a bid. Has drawn to within 7. Looks like going to stay toward the inside as Cara brings him to the top of the stretch. It's Cara suddenly 3 in front of Junta. Italian Soiree. Her Laugh looking for a seam in between runners. Is going to try to come out to about the 3 path. Meanwhile, Cara has fled the scene. Cara's in front by 5. Her Laugh running up into second along with Delarane down the outside. Italian Soiree. But a final 16 to go. Dylan Davis and Cara dominate the Suncoast. It's Cara to win it here by about 7. Her Laugh did get up for second. Delarane third. Italian Soiree fourth. And Dance.
Her Laugh gets up for second for Whit Beckman there. But, of course, Cara wins out of the Cassie barn. I thought a very impressive first run back. Did not look any worse for the time off. Frankly, looked very fresh, really ready to go. Makes me wonder, do you run her right away at a 50-point prep, give her time off before the Oaks, run her fresh again in the Oaks, or do you just let the normal form cycle happen here? Will be interesting to watch her, but this style always wins. If you can get gate to wire, always wins if you can do it. So this one was really, really good. I thought, I do think the run under Irad Ortiz behind her was very good as well. Going to have to make that move a lot earlier, not have to split 4 horses in this case, that sort of thing. But Cara, great bounce back.
Yeah, that was a great bounce back off of her finish in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, which honestly, she didn't run that bad in that race, but she looked like a completely different horse from where she was as a 2-year-old last year. I thought she was much stronger in this performance. Seeing her get out to the lead, I mean, we did just mention that the track was playing speed favoring, but I don't think it would have mattered in this case. The way that she ran, she looked strong. The only thing that, you can kind of look at that and take away is the fact that Her Laugh just completely botched the break.
She did.
And so when she botched the break there, that kind of changed the complexion of the race. She had been on the lead back in the Untappable Stakes. But the good thing for her is she's now won on the lead, and she ran an exceptionally good race kind of against the bias coming from dead last. I mean, she wasn't even on the screen for the first 3 quarters of the race there. So it's nice to see her put in that run. I think with this, it's going to have 2 really legitimate shots going forward.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, out of the Cassie barn, it's not one that it's not a name that when I think Oaks, when I think Preakness, when I think Belmont or Acorn, something like that, I don't immediately go to the Cassies of the world.
You think about his fillies going towards like the King's Plate, something like that.
Something like this, right? Still super, or something at Gulfstream, in the championship meet, something like that. But usually on the Turk side of things or whatever it might be. So it's fun to see more and more of these names. We're seeing the Owen Hardys. We're seeing these other names that maybe we don't always get to see on the Derby Trail. Awesome to see them pop up this time of year. Speaking of people on the Derby Trail, you got to do a cool interview yesterday, and these are the kinds of things that we want to bring to you here on BloodHorse Monday. Again, Sean Collins, Louie Rabaut hanging out with you. Thanks for making us part of your Horse Racing Monday on the YouTube channel, of course. You can catch us live every Monday, by the way, at 2 o'clock. You want to interact with the show, you're welcome to do that. Of course, catch us anywhere you want. But there is a version on YouTube if you want to see what I look like. Or Sean. That's actually considerably better. You got to do one of these cool interviews yesterday with not only a trainer, but an owner on the Derby Trail. How about that?
Yeah, yesterday we got to talk to the connections of Burnham Square, winner of the Holy Bull Stakes just last week. Got to talk to trainer Ian Wilkes, Clay Whitham, who manages the racing and the breeding alongside his mother, Janice. So both of them were very, very nice enough to sit down with us, kind of talk about their horse. One of the things that we kind of focused on was this horse's development. It's not a horse that they really kind of had a lot of high expectations for right out of the gate. In fact, they actually put him in a maiden claiming race for his debut, $150,000. So, you don't usually see horses get claimed for that much. But that was kind of where their head was. Thank God they didn't get claimed because now they got a horse on the Derby Trail.
That's right.
It's pretty cool to talk to them.
So here's Sean's interview with Ian Wilkes and all the
welcome into the show today, Ian Wilkes and Clay Whitham of the Burnham Square team, winner of the Holy Bull Stakes last weekend. Ian is the trainer. Clay, you manage the racing and breeding operations alongside your mother, Janice. First of all, congratulations to you guys on having such a nice horse and getting on the Kentucky Derby Trail here with Burnham Square.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, looking back at that performance, you've kind of had a week to let it settle in. One of the things that we talked about on the podcast last week, me and Louie, was just how professional of a win that this was. He kind of made multiple moves throughout the race. He took the lead at the top of the stretch and was still moving away strong. Ian, were you expecting that kind of performance from him in just his 4th start?
Off his maiden win, yeah, I was you always, when you get the water gets deeper, you want to see improvement. And he had trained well, and with the blinkers added to him in that maiden win, he was much more tractable, much more professional. So, yeah, I was expecting a good performance from him.
And I know Edgar Zayas, the jockey, he mentioned after the race that he felt like the horse still was a little nervous. He kind of, before the race and getting into the gate, he still felt some of those nerves there. I know he broke a little bit slowly and was back further than he had been in his maiden win. What does it say about the horse that he was able to still win anyway? And then when he does kind of finally start to get some confidence in going into the gate and getting himself started, how good can this horse be?
That's what we got to find out. He got a little hot before the race, which I think that was his biggest downfall about the race, was he got a little bit hot. I've got to try and eliminate that. But we don't know how good he can get yet. This horse, the distance is not an issue for him. That's it. We got to find out how good, how much can he handle the top dogs. That's what we got to see. That's what we got to find out.
You mentioned, kind of trying to fix that problem of him getting hot. As a trainer, how do you do that over the next couple of weeks before his next start? What are you trying to do with him in the morning to kind of fix that problem?
I think it's more in an afternoon situation. I'm happy the way the horse has come out of the race. I feel he's come out of it better than he went into that race. So I think it's a case I need to go and school him in the paddock. Take him down and school him at Gulfstream without taking him down there and running him. Just give him a practice run. I think that will help him.
Awesome. Well, just tell me a little bit about his development. He's a gelding. This was his 4th career start. I know he lost his first 2 races, but he was pretty close there. You guys also debuted him at Keeneland for $150,000 tags. Just kind of what were your early thoughts on him? Kind of how has he developed as he's come along here? I know you said the blinkers really kind of have helped him out over the last 2 starts, but just kind of walk me through that development.
Yeah, leading up to his first race, he trained okay. Not spectacular, but trained okay, and that's when Clay and I talked about putting him in for 150. It's a big tag, that's a big hefty price, and not a lot. Even though Linda had produced runners, she hadn't produced. They were claimant level horses. So, and if you look at this horse, he's a plain Jane. There's nothing to see about him. Wow. He's a good looking horse. So we took the shot. He actually surprised us in the race. He ran really good. And off of that race, he started working a little better. And that's when we stepped him up to a maiden special weight.
Clay, I know 100.
Yeah, here I'll interject since I've been known to just cut in on people. But, after that first race, we talked about, what we're going to run him back in. And it was pretty immediate. Ian said, well, we better not do that again. So we knew that we weren't going to run back for that 150 tag after what he showed us in that race.
I know 150 is no small amount of money. You don't often see too many horses claimed there. But Clay, from your perspective as an owner, to debut a horse for a tag, what kind of goes into that decision, especially a young horse like this?
Well, it is a decision you really have to think about. But in general, we don't try to sneak horses through maiden claiming conditions with the idea that we'd really be, usually you're not looking to get them claimed, but we wouldn't put them in there if we didn't think, we wouldn't want to be second guessing ourselves if the horse did get claimed. Like Ian said, the mare hadn't produced that much up to that point, and he's not a big standout physical type of horse, so we didn't think that it was likely that he would get claimed. But we don't start very many horses in that condition. But again, the 150 that is a big a big number. And I don't think I didn't watch all the statistics, but for the whole meet at Keeneland, I don't know whether any horses got claimed for that tag.
What is that moment like when you see him run really well and you're waiting to find out whether or not he's been claimed? Was it a sigh of relief when you saw that he wasn't?
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't expect him to get claimed.
Yeah. And when he came back and he ran at Churchill, he stretched out to 2 turns there. I know he's now won twice at a mile and a 16th with the blinkers. What was your thoughts on his 3rd place finish there, second time out, Ian?
Well, I give him the benefit of the doubt because he made a lot of mistakes in that first race, even then he ran second. I actually thought he would win as well as he trained from that first race to the second race. And Francisco Arrieta rode him, and I feel bad for him because he's at the half mile and he couldn't get the horse going. He wouldn't go. And then all of a sudden, because he's running away from horses, not running into the dirt, just doing everything wrong. And then finally come running down the lane, got beat 3/4, but within 50 yards after the wire, he's 4 in front. So, I just knew what I had to do. I had to put a set of blinkers on him, to try and help him.
And those blinkers really worked out. He won by 9 his next time. He comes back and wins the Holy Bull. I know you said he's been doing pretty well and you're pretty pleased with how he's doing coming out of the race, but what's next for him? Are you pointing towards the Fountain of Youth? What would be your game plan to get there?
Yeah, that's the plan. Talk to Clay, Mrs. Whitham, and we'll go forward with the Fountain of Youth as long as he's doing good, and he's doing very well right now. So we'll just keep going forward and point for the Fountain of Youth, which is 4 weeks between the Holy Bull. So it's a logical spot. It's a good spot. It's a nice timing.
And would you be expecting him to get back on the work tab this weekend or another week yet, or?
Probably not till next week. He just ran a week ago, so it'll be next week before I do something. I don't need to do a lot with him because I was a little hard on him coming into that last race because I was coming off a maiden and going to a stake. So I just wanted him a little bit tighter. I wanted to keep moving forward. Now I want to watch him and let him float along and come into the next race and judge each work on how he's doing coming into it. But I don't think I have to be, because he's not a big, robust horse. He's a very clean-winded horse. He's not a big, heavy horse either. So it's not like I have to drill him to be where I want to be. I just got to get the right kind of works.
And we mentioned the mother a little bit earlier. That's Linda the Dam. She's a homebred for you guys, Clay, and her mother was a homebred as well. Just tell me a little bit about this family line and how it's developed through your family over the years.
Yes. One part of our breeding program, we have had some foundation mares and that have kept producing over the generations. And the foundation mare for this family was a mare named Listen Well, and that was a Secretariat mare that my parents purchased after she retired from racing. So we purchased her as a broodmare prospect. And one thing about this business, I like some of these sayings, and there's a lot of times it's better to be lucky than smart. And so in that case, we bought her. She was pregnant with a foal that turned out to be a Grade 1 stakes winner, and that was a filly we named Listening. And so she one thing about broodmares, I don't know, I have these philosophies, and then sometimes you think you're right, and then you get proven wrong. But in general, our best broodmares have always come firing right out of the gate with good horses. And so, when Listen Well's first foal is a Grade 1 stakes winner, man, that's a nice feeling to have when you have a band of broodmares. So she clearly immediately went to the top of the list. And so anyway, started with Listen Well. She fired right out of the gate. And then a little later on, she had the mare Beautiful Noise. I have the pedigree here, so I won't get won't get my facts off too far, but Beautiful Noise was a nice racehorse. Listening and Beautiful Noise were both trained by Ron McAnally, and they were based in California, pretty much based at Santa Anita. And she was a very nice. She ran on the turf, and she was a hard trying horse. And Ian, she wasn't a pretty horse either. That's where Burnham Square kind of follows in the footsteps. These horses have been runners, but none of them have really been that pretty. So that's a little bit of the background.
Yeah, I agree with you there with Linda. She's sort of made the same way as what Burnham Square is. So my question, Clay, is: do I put him on the grass?
Well, not for his next start.
I think you might want to wait till at least after the spring to try that one. Well, Ian, tell me a little bit about training his mother, Linda. She was a Grade 2 winner on the turf at Churchill Downs in the Mrs. Revere Stakes. Are there any, other than the looks, are there any similarities that you see between the two as far as how they train?
She was a little tougher. Linda was always tough. Not real tough to gallop, not tough to handle, but just was a little bit tougher filly, tough in that way. Burnham Square is much easier to handle. He wants to, probably because he's been gelded, which is probably a benefit because he needed it, because he was a little bit like her early on before he got there, but now he's easy going. He wants to play with you. That's what he wants. But with her, she was always overachieved. I like that, about her, because I think, Clay, correct me if I'm wrong, her and Walkabout were in at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. And Walkabout just did things better, but Linda kept on overachieving, and that was a really good thing about her.
Do you find it to be an advantage when you've trained the mother or the sire of one of your horses? Do you see that as being any kind of advantage to kind of understanding the horse once you get them?
Well, it's always nice, you get to know them. But, well, I'm fortunate, with the Whitham's breeding program, you see them come down, the horses are well bred. The horses they come in educated, so yes, it's good to know them, but it don't matter here because these horses are, are nice pedigrees.
And Burnham Square, his sire is Liam's Map. Clay, kind of what went into your decision to choose Liam's Map for Linda, and what did you like about the stallion?
We do put a lot of time into our breeding program, and I mentioned to you earlier that's really my mom's has always been the lead person on planning matings for the mares. We sit down and kind of put a list together about horses that we would like to use in our matings planning, and we just liked Liam's Map, and I know my mom liked Liam's Map, so we identified him as a horse that we wanted to use, based off of his race record and how attractive he is physically as a sire. So we had him on the list to use, and then we just kind of figure out which mare that we want to fit him on. So I think that would be the main thing is I look back and there weren't any light bulbs that went off that said, we want Liam's Map. We want Linda to go to Liam's Map because of this other horse we saw bred on that cross. But I think it was mostly we just wanted to find a mare to fit onto him, and that's the mare we selected.
And welcome back, Ian. I know we lost your video there for a moment, but welcome back.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Hey, Ian, if you blink off, I'll just talk until you can get back on.
I can count on you, Clay. I'm ready.
Awesome. Well, just tell me a little bit about, you guys have worked together for a long time, the Whithams and Ian Wilkes. So just kind of tell me about how this relationship came to be and all the success you guys have had. I know you've had Fort Larned that won the Breeders' Cup Classic, quite a few other graded stakes winners as well. So just kind of talk to me a little bit about your relationship.
I'll let you start it, Clay, how you come into the barn.
Yeah, we had a racing program, breeding and racing program, and our initial thoroughbred racing program was the trainer. The relationship was primarily with Ron McAnally. I mean, I know over the years that my folks had a few different trainers, but really, the kind of the evolution of the program taking a big step up was when we started using Ron as a trainer. So we sent horses to him and had great success with Ron, and of course the crown jewel of that relations, that phase of the program was Bayacoa.
Mm-hmm.
And Ron was instrumental in finding her in Argentina and facilitating the purchase. And so we had some good horses with Ron. But over the years, we were observing how when we first started running horses in California, the purses in California were significantly better than they were in Kentucky. So as good owners, we do pay attention to the purse structure. And, it became obvious that Kentucky purse structure was really improving. So we made the decision, in the early 2000s. So Bayacoa won the Breeders' Cup at Gulfstream Park. So we keep our Gulfstream Park mojo going. She won the Breeders' Cup Distaff at Gulfstream Park in 1989. So then we were based in California for many, many years. And then in the early 90s, 2004, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, we made the decision to move the base of our racing operation to Kentucky, and that meant Churchill Downs for us. And we looked around and thought about different trainers to at the time to go talk to, and we settled on Carl, on Napsker. I'm sure primarily because of Unbridled and Street Sense, because we would like to win the Kentucky Derby. So when you're thinking about changing and going to a program, that certainly has some bearing on it.
You hear that, Ian? They want to win a Kentucky Derby. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Well, Ian, from your perspective, you were Carl's assistant at the time when they joined his barn. You can pick up the story now, kind of how did that transition into you taking over from Carl for the Whithams?
Yeah, it was leading up to that. Carl and I were partners. We developed a partnership in the training and created a Traits LLC, and so I was always partners. And then in 2006, Carl decided to take a back seat and just kept Bentley Smith and the Ginters and Taffels to train. And he wanted to give me more recognition. He wanted as partners. So I took over in 2006, and that's fortunate. When I took over, none of the owners left the barn. Which is a testament to the owners, Carl, for a program that he built. They all stayed on, and we went on from there from 2006, and now been training like Clay has been in the barn for 20. This is the 21st year, and it's been a lot of fun.
And, Carl is probably one of the best mentors you could possibly have in this game. What did you learn from him that's really kind of helped your training style?
He done what I like to do. I like to develop horses. I think that's my forte. I just love developing horses. It's always fun to have the good horses, the Fort Larnards, the McCrackens, the Walkathon. They're fun, they're great. But I like taking that average horse and getting some black type with them, and because I train for a lot of breeders, and asset value, getting that black type for their mares I like doing that. I enjoy that. And the biggest thing what you learn from Carl is he was so good at pointing a horse for a certain race. Like if our end goal is the Kentucky Derby, every step we make is in lead up to winning that race, doing that, and you watch it firsthand. I was fortunate. I was riding unbridled in 90. Then in 2007, we had Street Sense, and then we had Lady Joni. So we wanted to point Lady Joni for the Oaks, but she had a setback, so we just made it determined we'll point it for the Alabama. So we worked back from the Alabama to get her there, and it's just his forte of doing that was great to watch.
And so now, kind of putting that on Burnham Square, you have a target now on the Kentucky Derby. He's got 20 points to qualify right now. How do you get him through the next 3 months to get there?
It's building block every step. Every step, we'll use each race. I want to run him in the Fountain of Youth, like to run him back, most likely, let's take one race at a time. Most likely the Florida Derby. I think this horse needs a couple more races because I don't need him to you don't want to make mistakes in the Kentucky Derby. That's the goal. So every race is I can't be afraid to get beat. I think that's the key, in each race. Yeah, I want to win every race, but I can't be afraid. I've got to build this horse to my ultimate goal. And that's where I'll use each race to get to where I want to go.
And I know you were around 2 Derby winners with Carl and Unbridled and Street Sense, but you've been down this trail before, both of you, with McCracken back in 2017. Did you learn anything from that you think will really kind of help you out this time going forward?
Yeah, you just got, the biggest thing is you have to enjoy the race. Sometimes you can get caught up in the hype and get too worried about little, things, but you have to enjoy it. You got to sit back and let the horse will take you there. If he's good enough, he'll take you there. And we just have to enjoy it.
And Clay, I know everybody always says at this point, it's still a couple months away. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But when you see him win the Holy Bowl the way that he does, do you go to sleep with a little extra dreaming that night?
Absolutely. When you win a prep race, it makes you think, well, maybe we can.
And then I know you guys had Camp Hale run in the Sam F. Davis Stakes yesterday as well. He ran a pretty good race. It was his first start against Stakes Company. He's still a maiden with 3 seconds beforehand. But Ian, the pace really kind of held throughout the race, and he still ran strong to finish 4th. I know he got nailed right on the wire, but what did you think of his performance?
I was very proud of him. I thought the horse ran good. Come to the top of the stretch, Brian thought he had him. He was going to win the race. And he just flattened out a little bit. That's the only thing. I thought he made some mistakes in the race, and the only thing is maybe not his forte to go 2 turns that far. I think I may freshen him and cut him back to 1 turn. I talked to Clay about that yesterday, and with him, I wouldn't be opposed to maybe trying, if I go back to 1 turn with him, is put a set of blinkers on, because I thought he got a little bit lost in the top of the stretch yesterday when we wanted him to go forward. He wandered around. He's got a world of talent, but he'll get better as we go on, this horse.
Clay, before we started the recording here, you and I were talking about just kind of giving the horse the opportunity at this time of year. If you think they're going to be a good 3-year-old, you want to try them on the Derby trail. You guys tried it out. How important was it to try it out and now kind of rebalance the rest of the year for him?
Yeah, you have to take your shot when you can. It's when we have a horse that looks like a nice horse. Those don't, in our program, those don't come along every year. It can be quite a stretch time between having a nice 3-year-old male. And I say that, I keep thinking Colt, but, we've gelded that horse. But, it can be a while in between having a horse that nice as Camp Hale. So, with what he showed us in his first 2 races, he's a nice horse, and we've always thought highly of him. So we just wanted to give it a shot. It's really a crazy year for us. We have 3 really nice 3-year-old colts, and just for us to get a really nice colt, just to get one nice colt, is a real accomplishment. But we have 3 really nice colts this year, and Camp Hale is certainly one of those, and obviously Burnham Square has gone to the head of the class, and we have another colt that hasn't broken his maiden yet, and we're looking forward to trying to get him going too.
What's that horse's name?
Pitkin.
All right. You heard it here first. Watch out for that horse, anybody that's watching this. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us here on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. Best of luck to both of you the rest of the way with Burnham Square, with Camp Hale, and every other horse that you guys have. I'm looking forward. I always like seeing, every time I see the Whitham Silks out there, I know it's Ian Wilkes. So I'm glad that you guys keep it easy for me to figure out who the trader is. But thank you guys so much for being on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to Ian Wilkes and Clay Whitham there for joining us here on the BloodHorse Monday, man. Good stuff there, Sean. You are you're an expert now. It's really the thing I worry about is I think we're very close to this being a solo show, and it's just the Sean show, and then I'm out of here. But several things to react to, and I thought really interesting points. But I liked how he talked about with Burnham Square. By the way, last gelding to win the Derby.
Mind that bird.
How about that a little bit? All right, so we're trying to get back into those ranks here. It's fun to hear owners, especially. I'm so glad you were able to get both of them for this. Just talk about, hey, this isn't usual for us. This is a process. You talked about, you mentioned Secretariat of that clip, just how long it takes to establish these kinds of programs if you want to do it the way that the Whithams do, right? And so really, really good stuff there. Was there a singular thing, 2 things that really stood out to you when you were sitting with them yesterday?
I really just enjoyed hearing kind of Ian Wilkes's process on how he likes to develop
I
horses.
think that part was interesting too.
I thought that was something that he really kind of picked up from Carl Nafster for sure when he spent the time with him. And it's nice to see how that carried over. And obviously Carl had so much success with it, with Street Sense, with Unbridled. And to see this pay off now in Burnham Square and Ian, I think, it's just a cool thing to see. But just kind of listening to his philosophies on training, I think, is pretty cool. That's always cool when you get to sit down with a trainer and you get to just kind of hear where their mind is throughout the whole process.
It's got to be too for a guy like Ian Wilkes to hear that interview and how Clay is just like, we know there's a process. It isn't going to work the same for every horse. The patience from an ownership group like that has to be a real, frankly, for an owner, for a trainer, has to be a real sense of relief because it doesn't always go the way you think. Frankly, Sean, the more I'm around horse racing, the more amazed I am that a horse ever gets to the starting gate. It's a stunning process to get from A to B. And so, fun to hear those kinds of things.
And one of the things you heard him say was when he kind of took over as the main man in the barn, none of the owners left.
Right.
And so that really is a testament to Ian as a trainer. That's a testament to Carl and, the owners that he was able to get. And, obviously every owner wants to have a horse in the Kentucky Derby every year. There's few owners that can actually do that. And so for a lot of owners to kind of have the faith in your trainer that they're going to be able to kind of pick out the ones that are the Derby horses, make sure that they're on that path and get them there with their best chance to win. Because remember, the one time Ian Wilkes had a horse in the Derby, it was McCracken. He was a legitimate shot in that Kentucky Derby. Racetrack kind of came up weird that day, but he was one of the favorites going into there. So if he's there, he's got a good horse.
Burnham Square really loved the stretch out in his maiden win, and then of course turns it back again in the Holy Bull. It was a race you and I talked about last week, of course, as part of our race reviews. Is that still the most impressive move we've seen going from last on the backstretch, getting up close, and then making that 3-path move to win?
I think so. Because of the fact that he made multiple moves.
I agree.
He inched up earlier in the race, then he kind of sat and he waited. And remember, we talked about this last week. This was all while he was still being considered a little bit nervous going into the race. Right. And so he's still, and Ian mentioned it there in that interview, he's still not 100% there mentally. And so the fact that he's already able to make those kind of moves when he's not there 100% mentally, I think this is definitely, you got to have him, if not the top spot on your Derby radar right now, you got to have him at least in the top 3.
I agree with you. Sean Collins, I'm Louie Rabaut. We're hanging out with you on BloodHorse Monday. Thanks to Ian and Clay for hanging out with us in the previous segment there. Of course, thanks to this guy for getting the interview together. I really do appreciate that very much. We visit with our friend Frank Angst now from BloodHorse.com. There he is in that live. Isn't that just an official in that backdrop, like I got a picture, like that's a dance from my wedding, then the poster from my first Derby, like like normal. Frank Angst he looks like a lawyer, doesn't he? And a little bit of like legals. Is there anything important behind you, Frank? I've always wondered.
Just leather-bound books.
I bet it smells great in there, Frank. Frank Angst, of course, BloodHorse.com and all of the things. Stallion of the Week, you'll see him as well, doing a bunch of work on the dollars and cents as well. So, Frank, what are you working on right now, buddy? What do we need to learn about?
I mean, I thought we'd start with the Stallion of the Week and right to it. I mean, it's the I think with it, it's 3-year-old season, so I think that's where our focus is going to be for most of these.
Yeah,
and it takes us right to Constitution. I mean, John Hancock, just so impressive in the stretch, just refused to give in, even appeared to be headed really probably a neck up, really neck behind, and re-rallied to put an impressive win up in the Sam F. Davis. Constitution, he didn't waste any time from his very first crop. He had Taste the Law, second in the Derby, and Belmont Stakes winner, so a classic winner in that first crop. Constitution kept it going last year. He had Catching Freedom, who placed in the Preakness. Was third place in the Preakness. So he's definitely a stallion that is a classic-minded. Breeders that go to him are looking for a classic type of horse that John Hancock is.
And like you said, who's back this weekend?
Catching Freedom. Back in the Mineshaft Stakes this weekend.
There you go.
So first start since the Ohio Derby.
I gotta say, Frank, I mean, you're welcome to join Sean and me on the Ford over bandwagon this year. I mean, we just adding a Catching Freedom. What a group, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. And I mean, you look at Constitution. He won the 2014 Florida Derby. John Hancock's got some familiar connections there, Windstar and CHC, and Windstar, of course, is the breeder. So they didn't have to go far because they stand Constitution for $110,000 at their farm near Versailles, Kentucky. So it's big things for Constitution continue. I know we had a nice feature on him in the magazine and just what trainers are seeing on the track, and boy, he's off to a good start for sure.
We even saw, a horse like We the People, a little bit later of a developer in the 3-year-old spring wins. The Peter Pan was kind of the buzz horse going into that Belmont as well in 2022. So yeah, Constitution, that's another graded winner there, Frank. I mean, they're kind of all over the place, aren't they?
And how about those names? They get a lot of good names.
Everybody's
a Patriot with this horse. I love it. Good
Very
stuff.
Horse,
I think he had Chasing Liberty that also won this week. So yeah, that's his other stakes winner this year, rather. So he's had 2 stakes winners this year for Constitution, and everyone's having a lot of fun with the names.
I love it. We were just joking that, we saw online some say, oh, John Hancock didn't sign the Constitution. And the second I saw that post, Frank, I don't know if you're like me. The second I saw that, I was like, that horse is winning. And there's no 2 ways about it. You can't say that kind of thing and not have it come back.
No doubt about that one.
All right. So what else? Go ahead.
Yeah, go. I was just going to say, I watched the first podcast, of course, off to a good start. And it occurred to me that, we very well could have some viewers on here who are not familiar with BloodHorse. So I thought I would just take a minute or two to tell everyone about BloodHorse, because I think going in, I just assumed everyone knew about it. But just to take a few minutes to, let everybody know if we do have some new viewers that find us on this platform, we very much want you to come over to our other platforms, and we have a lot of them. BloodHorse is over 100 years old. It's always been an industry magazine. Industry publication is probably more accurate these days. We're on a lot of platforms. The magazine has gone to a monthly now, and it kind of has some longer features, really takes deep dives into news issues in the industry, personalities in the industry, as I just mentioned, like stallions and breeding. That's working, and of course sales as well. Then because we're only a monthly in the magazine, we have a terrific website where you can get all the latest racing news. That's just bloodhorse.com. So racing, sales, breeding, really every corner of the industry type news, issues that the industry is following and concerned about. And along with that, we also have a newsletter, and the newsletter is free. It's called BloodHorse Daily, or BH Daily for short. and it's a little bit more business focused, but it also has racing and more general interest type stories for people there as well. So a lot of different platforms. The website, besides having stories, also has a lot of good information, just like upcoming stakes. You can see what stakes are on the horizon. We have our stallion register, which is just huge for us. And, on the drop-down menu, you can search any stallion and see how they're doing. The research on Constitution, that's how I gathered it. Went right to his page, and you can see how he's doing this year. If you're a breeder, it's just invaluable to be able to go there and find a good match for your mares.
The other part too, if you happen to be listening on ESPN Louisville or wherever you are, and you're sort of peripherally around horse racing, if you're willing to spend 5 minutes a week reading Byron's great piece at the Derby Dozen on BloodHorse.com, Byron King, of course, and you just watch the replay of the race that happened over the weekend, the Derby Prep, you're going to know so much on Derby Day. Any party you go to, any people you're hanging out with, if you use BloodHorse.com, you'll even know the Derby Trail, like Frank mentioned. And so all the stake schedule, all the different things, a terrific resource. Years before I started doing this show, I was using BloodHorse.com for all those things.
And it's so great what Byron has done with that column. Of course, Steve Haskin launched that thing, and Byron took it over. And now you find a version of it online at BloodHorse.com. It also appears in the daily, so you can catch it there. And then Byron also does a video, so you can watch it there as well. And at BloodHorse, we have a the vast majority of our site is for free, but we also have a BH Plus site, which is for our subscribers to the magazine. So, I think it's kind of fun, kind of retro to subscribe to a print magazine if that's something you want to do. But you also get, when you get that subscription, you also get BH Plus, which you're going to see some exclusive videos. You're going to see videos before we put them on the free site. You're going to see them first. Yep. We also have in-depth breeding articles on recent Grade 1 winners. We have Market Watch, which is very much industry oriented and just information you're not going to find anywhere else. So we try to take advantage of all those platforms. We hope that everyone can find a platform that's correct for them. The magazine also has a virtual magazine and an app now, so you can get the magazine that way, and you save a little bit money since we don't have to print it up. And there's an app; it comes on your phone. BH Daily also has just the best app, in my opinion, of any racing news site. Just a terrific app that's associated with that, and also has a PDF. So we have a lot of platforms covered, and we're glad to be in the podcast realm as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, the site has everything from, like Frank mentioned, a stallion registry to which races are coming up. I mean, it's literally everything from how a horse is made until the very highest level of horse racing. So yes, BloodHorse has got every single thing for you. What should we be watching for this week, though, on the website, Frank?
Well, just some big 3-year-old races this week that we'll be previewing for sure. Return of the horse that really impressed me last year, East Avenue. I mean, just tremendous debut win at Ellis, and then he just wins at Grade 1 at Keeneland as if it's no big deal.
Workout, right?
Had a troubled start in the juvenile, so I think that's very forgivable. So anxious to see how he does.
I know you'll be watching because you mentioned this last week on the pod. That first race back as a 3-year-old for those who have been at the high level as a 2-year-old is really important.
Yeah, I think it's telling. I mean, it especially, Louie, with fewer starts now, there's just not a whole lot of margin for error. I mean,
less data.
Maybe when you had 6 and 7 starts before the Derby, you could correct something, but it really has to be right on schedule. You cannot afford much of a setback at this point. Even to us, it's like, oh, it's still February, but for these trainers, it's down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. You heard Ian Wilkes mention that in that interview about how, he still wants to get a couple more races into him because he wants to make sure there's no more mistakes by Kentucky Derby Day.
Yeah, no, that's right. It seems to be, and he talked about those building blocks too. Great interview, by the way. If you're just joining us live, go back and listen to that with Ian Wilkes and the Whitham folks there. They're stable. Really just a terrific insight into, what the process is like of getting a 3-year-old on that trail and getting those things moving. So glad they were able to join us here on the show as well. I mean, I know you don't do the Derby Dozen, Frank, but whose run was better, do you think? John Hancock's or Burnham Square's this last 2 weeks?
think I will slightly go with Burnham Square.
Yeah.
I thought he had a little bit of trouble that he overcame.
Yes.
And the type of trouble he ran into forced him to overcome a bit against the track. You don't usually see that running style. Of course, that just said, I think I might have had John Hancock rated higher in my NTRA poll.
He's the inconsistent Frank Angst. There you go. They are. No,
at this point.
They really are. And frankly, so much of that is, which connections do you trust? Is there a breeding that you trust there? Those sorts of things. Do you like a constitution more than another, sire, that kind of thing? I don't know that look, for this part, we can say, Frank, it's February. It's okay if we change our mind now in the next 82 days.
Frank,
well, exactly. We try to sort them out as best we can.
That's right. Yeah.
Frank,
also watch them play out. Speed King is still the horse that's really impressed me. I'm going to really keep an eye on that horse. I really liked his run in the Southwest. So that's one thing I'm sure of at this point. It could change a lot by its next start, or maybe reinforce it even more.
Frank, you mentioned that you voted in the National Thoroughbred Racing Association's poll, which gets released every Tuesday. And what kind of goes into your mindset at this point of how you rank the 3-year-olds? Is it Derby prospects, or is it just who's running the best?
You always try to balance what have they achieved this year against also potential. So it's a little bit of both. I mean, when Speed King had his win, that was the most impressive outing from this generation that I'd seen. So I went and made him number 1. But then for the second week, Citizen Bull came back with his big win.
Yeah.
So between being a champion and doing that made him an easy choice at number 1. So you're just trying to balance a little bit of, potential, but more. I like to start with what have they accomplished this year. If East Avenue comes out and runs a big Risen Star, that's going to move him up significantly. I mean, I like that horse a lot, so I would even consider him for number 1 or 2, seeing how that goes. Yeah, it's always a little bit of a balance there.
Yeah, a little bit of both is right. Well, he is Frank Angst, BloodHorse.com. Go check out all the great things going on at the website, and of course, hey, go get signed up. Go get the magazine as well. Like Frank said, I wouldn't use the word retro in the sales pitch, but I would say, I'm just kidding, Frank. Yeah, go get in there. No, but honestly, it reminds me of, for example, Frank, when I go to the track, I like to hold the paper ticket still, right? I don't know.
Just get that print magazine.
About that. Yeah, that's right.
Impress your friends. Say, hey, I'm the 20-year-old that actually gets a print magazine.
There you go. Get yourself a coffee table, kids. You hear me? Frank Angst wants you to have a coffee table. Well, there you go.
All right.
On
the BH Plus this week, we have an update on HISA. We cover the lawsuits and everything that's going on there. But we also wanted to look at and see how they're actually performing. And, the safety numbers are much improved, and that's an important story. It's really written for the magazine, so we want to give that to our subscribers first. And if you are a subscriber, you get BH Plus. So that's one of those advantages. It's a story along with 4 video features. So it's definitely an interesting update and an important progress for the industry, really, in terms of those safety numbers.
Yep. All right. It's chicken wings for me. What's your must-have Super Bowl food, Sean Collins?
Mozzarella sticks.
Ooh, I like Mott sticks. Where does Frank Angst go?
I'm a big fan of Skyline dip.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not by itself. You gotta have some chips with that one, but
just a spoon.
I'm not that hardcore on the Skyline, but when you grow up in Cincinnati and you go to Skyline late at night in your pajamas with your family, you're kind of hooked for life. So,
all right, well, there you go. There's your Skyline read for the week. His name is Frank Angst, BloodHorse.com, our fearless editor. We appreciate you joining this week. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there you go, Frank Angst. We'll wrap up the show by looking forward. Interesting part of the year, right? So we had last week the 3 Derby preps, 20 pointers all across the country, Long Island, Miami, LA. This week, back to Tampa for that kind of in-between trail to the Derby at Tampa, right? With the 20 points and the Sam. Jason and I call it the Sam, by the way.
Yeah, I'm down to keep calling it that.
Okay, all right. So we got 3, Jason.
I was wondering how long it was.
Because I talked to him yesterday, or I talked to him on Friday on ESPN Louisville, and I said, how's it going with getting it called the Sam? And he said, I think we're the only 2. So,
well, you got 3.
We got 3 now, Jason. There you go, buddy. All right. So there you go. We get now into that Louisiana Derby schedule, right? So Tampa and Louisiana are kind of doing their own thing as far as space between their prep and the Kentucky Derby, 6 weeks, obviously, with the Louisiana Derby. We get the Risen Star on Saturday. We get the return, as he mentioned, as Frank mentioned, of East Avenue this weekend. A horse that I agree with Frank on, by the way, extraordinarily high on. His performance at Keeneland was
sensation.
Him and Citizen Bold, 2 best performances by 2-year-olds last year, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, up there in that kind of, conversation. Outside of the immersive ones, she's whatever. She's different. I get it. But looking forward, who is it on that list that you're most looking forward to? Is it an East Avenue, or is it one of these horses that's already run well? Maybe even a Jonathan's Way, a Built, something like that. I mean, is it any of those?
For me, it's Jonathan's Way, because I thought a lot of him as a 2-year-old last year. So I really want to kind of see how he's developed coming into his 3-year-old season. I liked that he has already shown that he overcame the issue that he had in the Breeders' Cup when he was kind of stuck between horses, didn't like it. He saw that next time out in the Kentucky Jockey Club and ran well. So I want to see if he keeps putting those pieces together. Obviously, East Avenue is a big draw, but Built is one that I definitely want to see, because he went wire to wire in a small field to win the Gun Runner. And then coming back in the Lecomte, he did not have a great trip. He was down on the inside. He was able to still mount a run and be right there at the wire. He got nailed right on the wire. So we talked about Burnham Square and, a couple different horses being already kind of showing that they have some versatility. I want to see what happens now as kind of the deeper waters approach Built, and see whether or not he can float on those. Yeah.
Is he more of a Catalano Louisiana horse, or is he a Derby horse?
Yeah.
Those are real questions.
We'll find out this weekend.
No, that's right. Jonathan's Way, we haven't seen since the Kentucky Jockey Club, going the 2 turns there. This is a Vekoma, Indy Charlie on the dam side. This is a horse that can get back to this. Obviously, the Rigney Racing folks with Bill Bauer. Do you expect him to show up big this weekend? Because I'll be honest, I do.
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah.
And we're going to learn a lot about him. I believe we're stretching out to a 1.8 this time. And so, with Vekoma, he was really good sprinting. He won going long as well in the Bluegrass. But, he won going sprinting. I know Indy and Charlie, a lot of times people kind of see that as sprinting. So
they can, sure.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yep.
And so, you can see where you want to see where this horse is going to go as far as distance. I think this is going to be a good test for him. I remember talking to Phil Bauer last year about the distance with him going kind of stretching out. He said it was kind of an unknown at that point. Right. Now that he's grown, now that he's, you would assume he's going to be stronger this year. I'd like to see how he kind of comes out of it. Yeah, big card there in New Orleans this weekend for sure. Good cheer returns in the on the Philly side of things in the Rachel Alexandra, alongside Simply Joking, who has been sensational in her 2 starts to this point for trainer Whit Beckman. Obviously, Ballerina d'Oro in here as well for trainer Chad Brown. This sets up, buddy. We're starting to, I think, okay, I shouldn't say we. Louie Rabaut, me. I'm starting to realize not only are these Oaks waters really deep, they're really good. Yeah. This is a talented crop of 3-year-old fillies. Yeah, this 3-year-old filly crop is going to be, it might go down as one of the best ones we've had. Because we're going to insert immersive into it in the summer. Yeah. Isn't that scary? It's incredible. It's as good as it is right now. And then the 2-year-old champion, who was the dominant force in the division, is going to come back at Saratoga. It is, and we asked Frank about this earlier with, a Catching Freedom coming back this year, that excitement that all of us have about the older dirt male division. Where we never have to worry about that is on the filly side of things. So for us to get this many good 3-year-old fillies to keep that distaff division rolling, I love it so much, Sean. If you're willing to spend the time and fall in love with the fillies, especially, they're going to run forever. It's why, frankly, I'm rooting for Burnham Square. It's gelded. Yeah. I might see him for a long time. Exactly. And it's a weird way to look at your sport, but at the same time, if he's good, I get to watch him for 3 years or 4 years, whatever it might be. With an idiomatic, if she were a colt, we'd never seen her again. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And that's okay. And I get it. People need to pay bills, and we you have an owner on, he talks about those things. I understand. It's not a negative comment at all. But on this side, Simply Joking, good cheer, Ballerina d'Oro. I mean, just the list, just in this race, spectacular talent. It is. And you look at Torpedo Anna, she's coming back as a 4-year-old. The last time I talked to Kenny McPeak, he was saying that he thinks she's probably coming back as a 5-year-old if everything goes well this year. So you do want to don't do that to me. Don't get me all excited on a Monday. I got a whole week left. I'm trying to lift my own spirits after the Eagles win. Yeah, you know what? That's fair enough. Yeah. These fillies, a lot of times you can see where you can get a little bit more attached to them after the spring because they're around for longer. We were just talking about people who may be getting into the industry, just discovering BloodHorse. a lot of people don't know about the Kentucky Oaks. That's, you know,
Yeah, fair
outside
enough.
of
Yeah, fair
outside
enough.
of the racing industry. If this is kind of your first foray into horse racing, make sure you're paying attention to this Kentucky Oaks trail. Get to know the fillies. This could definitely be, as far as quality of field, the way it's shaping up right now, the Oaks could be just as good as the Derby, if not a little better.
Yeah, you know, get out there to Keeneland. Go check out the Ashland. Go out to those races that we see at these different tracks that are going to be great. The Bourbonnais Oaks, of course, up at Turfway Park. I'm just talking locally here, but, you know, races all over the country. We're going to see that Gulfstream Park Oaks. We're going to see, you know, the Santa Anita Oaks. All those races that set up. Get to know these horses because, frankly, you know what's fun too. We'll double wager there. Little Oaks Derby double. That's never an unfun wager, if you will.
Yeah, it's always nice to try to hit both of them. I have yet to find out what that's like to hit both the winners of both.
Would you
races.
have a single filly on top of your rankings right now for the Oaks? Do you have one? I would have Simply Joking at this point. Her running style, Whit Beckman, what I saw him do with Anna Marie last year, I would have her in Simply Joking's case, Whit Beckman in this case, on top. But that's only because Immersive's not here. I want to be very clear.
I'd put Good Cheer on top.
Okay.
On top. So I'm.
Oh, they're going head to head.
Yeah,
That's
going head to head.
fantastic.
So we'll
Yes.
have our answer hopefully
Yes.
this weekend. But she was so impressive to me last year. I got to see her run in person several times at Churchill. I did not get that opportunity with Simply Joking. So, you know, that might be part of it there. But she just, you know, seeing her in the flesh, I just think she's really impressive.
We need to come up with whatever that bias is when you see a horse in person and then you just can't get over it. We need a name for that. The in-person bias or the I saw him with my own eyes bias, whatever that is. By the way, comment that in here on the BloodHorse Monday podcast. So glad you decided to hang out with us. Judith, Maxime, and Judy all commenting on the show today. Really do appreciate people doing that as well. I guess we can wrap it here. A ton of stakes on the card there, including the undercard, the Colonel Power, and all those kinds of things. Just a cool Risen Star. I might like it more than Louisiana Derby Day.
Really?
Because there's still a lot of unknowns. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something about this stage of the 50 pointers. For some reason, we always learn something substantial during the 50 pointers. And I think that starts this weekend.
When you look at the last, like last year, for example, Sierra Leone wins the Risen Star.
Correct.
And he goes elsewhere to the Bluegrass.
Right.
It's like a lot of times this is kind of, the Risen Star kind of acts like that central meeting spot.
It's almost like base camp for climbing the mountain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that's that central meeting spot in February. And
Yep.
then the top contenders usually, it seems like, kind of disperse into different final prep races, whether that be the Bluegrass, whether that be the Florida Derby, whether that be up at the Wood Memorial. It seems like a lot of times they kind of disperse that direction.
Yep.
And you're kind of already looking at that with a horse like East Avenue. You know, Brendan Walsh should probably end up, you know, maybe at the Bluegrass.
I agree.
The way he ran at Keeneland last year.
Yep.
So I think this really is when it starts getting fun. This is when horses start clinching their spots on
That's
the
right.
Kentucky Derby starting gate.
Not all of us can be Citizen Bull. You understand?
Exactly. Yeah. Not all of us get clinched already by the
Yeah, right. February 1st.
first day
yeah,
of
right.
February. So, but this is where, you know, you really kind of start figuring out who this field's going to be.
There you go. Well, he's Sean Collins. My name is Louie Rabaut. You can join us every Monday at 2:00 on YouTube on the BloodHorse YouTube page. And of course, you can catch us anytime afterward. If you want to watch this show, YouTube probably the easiest spot, but we'll be up on Spotify as well. If you're just a listener, we're just so thankful that you decided to make us part of your horse racing week. Again, for Sean, my name is Louie. We'll talk to you next week on BloodHorse Monday.